A modern object, sealed inside stone millions of years old. That's an out-of-place artifact. These things don't fit the timelines. They're like witnesses to parts of human history we've lost. There are 20 discoveries like this: an ancient Greek computer, maps of continents that shouldn't be known. By the end, you might see history differently. Not a straight line, more like a puzzle, a vast one. How does an astronomical device end up in the Mediterranean, centuries too early? Why is there a carving in an Egyptian temple that looks like a light bulb? These aren't just oddities, they're challenges, direct challenges to the story of human progress. To find something that rewrites what we know, what does that even mean? The puzzle of pieces that don't fit. It's a real category. In historical research, there's a name for it: out-of-place artifacts, OOP arts, but it's not just about age. There are plenty of ancient objects that make sense. An out-of-place artifact is different. It's something that seems impossible for its time and place. Technologically impossible, or materially, geographically, it's like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle. The object isn't the mystery, the context is. It's a riddle, and it challenges the timeline, our timeline. When we call something an OOP art, we're saying something about our own knowledge. We're admitting that, based on everything we think we know, this object shouldn't be here. It shouldn't exist, and that opens up questions. Are these proof of forgotten history, evidence of cultures that achieved more than we thought? Or is it ancient ingenuity, so advanced, so ahead of its time, that we struggle to see it for what it was? Maybe sometimes we've just misunderstood. Maybe we're looking at the past with our own modern expectations. So looking at these 20 artifacts, it's really about that tension. The evidence we find and the stories we've decided to believe. That clay jar found near Baghdad in the 1930s. It's just a small terracotta pot. But inside there was a copper cylinder sealed with asphalt, and inside that an iron rod. The materials are ordinary, but together they're not. If you filled the jar with something acidic, like vinegar, the copper and iron would react. They'd create a small electric charge, about 1 volt. It looks like a battery, a very old one, from somewhere between 250 BC and 225 CE. So the question is what it was for. One theory connects to a craft from that time. Artisans there did electroplating. They'd coat a metal like silver with a thin layer of gold. This object could have provided the current for that. It fits. The pieces line up for a practical use, but there's another idea. Maybe it was just a storage jar. For holding scrolls, the iron rod as a core, the asphalt as a seal. The electrical effect might be accidental, just a coincidence we notice now. That's the debate with artifacts like this. The Baghdad Battery isn't obvious, it's a suggestion. It challenges the idea that our understanding of electricity started with someone like Volta in the 18th century. This jar implies the basic principle of a battery turning chemical energy into electrical energy might have been found much earlier. Maybe it was an intentional device. Or maybe it was just a container, its real purpose gone, leaving us to look at it and wonder. In 1900, sponge divers were working in the Aegean Sea, near the island of Antikythera. They found something. It was in the wreck of a Roman cargo ship. They pulled up this lump, bronze and wood, all corroded, covered in sea life. It looked like a rock. Just a shapeless rock. Decades later, researchers looked inside with X-rays, and they saw it. This wasn't a rock, it was a machine, a hand-cranked machine with at least 30 interlocking bronze gears in a wooden case about the size of a large book. The Antikythera Mechanism, built around 100 years before the Common Era. It was a calendar, but a calendar of the cosmos. You'd turn a handle on the side, advance the gears. And on the front and back, dials and pointers would move. They showed the predicted positions of the sun and the moon against the zodiac. it could forecast eclipses. Lunar, solar, one dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games, a portable mechanical planetarium, a computer made of bronze built to model the motions of the sky. The knowledge to build it, it's staggering. The creator needed Babylonian astronomical records, Greek geometrical theories, precision metalworking to cut gears with teeth so fine. Some of the gears have prime numbers of teeth, a mathematical trick to model celestial cycles perfectly. The mechanism is a shock to the timeline. For centuries, we thought technology this complex didn't exist in the ancient world. We thought geared mechanisms this precise didn't appear until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. Over 1,000 years later, this one device rewrites a chapter. It tells us that in the Hellenistic period, in a place like Rhodes or Alexandria, there were thinkers and craftsmen who reached a technological peak we never knew about. And then that knowledge vanished, the ship sank, the libraries that held the blueprints were lost, the techniques were forgotten. The mechanism is more than an artifact. It's a ghost of a path not taken, a brilliant branch of human ingenuity that was cut off. It's proof that progress isn't a straight, upward line. It's a story of brilliant flashes in the dark, some fade away, leaving only a cryptic, gear-filled clue in the depths of the sea. That ghost of forgotten technology on the seafloor feels like a profound exception. But then you have an artifact that seems impossibly modern. The line between a historical shock and a simple mistake is razor thin, and that brings you to the Coso Artifact. It's a case that sits right at the messy, contentious heart of all this. In February of 1961, 3 friends were looking for minerals in the Coso Mountains of California. They found a nodule that looked like a geode, a hollow rock usually lined with crystals. They cracked it open, hoping for a beautiful interior, but inside wasn't a glittering cavity. It was a solid, strange object. At its core was a cylinder of white ceramic. Around that, a ring of corroded metal, and through the center, a 2-millimeter metal shaft. To anyone in the 20th century, the resemblance was immediate. It looked exactly like a spark plug from a modern engine. The immediate question was its age. The rockhounds said the nodule's outer crust was a hard, concretion-like layer, which suggested it had formed around the object over a very long time. Some early, informal analysis even said the encasing material could be hundreds of thousands of years old. The narrative was sensational, a modern spark plug sealed inside ancient stone. It was presented as the ultimate out-of-place artifact, proof of advanced technology in a distant, unknown past. Skeptics, though, offered a more mundane explanation. The object itself, when cleaned, was identified by spark plug collectors. It was a 1920s-era Champion brand plug, a common model used in early automobiles, even Model T Fords. The encasement around it, they argued, wasn't ancient rock. It was a hardened mixture of clay, rust, and mineral deposits, material that can accumulate surprisingly quickly around a metal object left in a damp, mineral-rich environment. In this view, the artifact was just a lost spark plug, maybe dropped or discarded by a prospector decades earlier. It had become cemented into a convincing-looking lump. This is where the Coso Artifact becomes a textbook example. It embodies the central debate around every potential OOP art. The initial story is captivating. A mysterious object in an impossible setting, but the first requirement of any serious inquiry is rigorous, verifiable context. Where exactly was it found? What were the precise geological layers? Was there any possibility of modern contamination? In this case, the exact find spot wasn't professionally documented. The object was removed from its original setting by amateur collectors. That lack of solid context makes definitive dating nearly impossible, and it leaves the door wide open for simpler explanations. The story also highlights another risk. the potential for hoaxes or, more commonly, sincere misidentification. The human mind is brilliant at finding patterns. We see faces in clouds, familiar shapes in random rock formations. When we find an object that looks like something we know, it's a natural leap to assume that's what it is. These rockhounds saw a spark plug shape, and their minds filled in a monumental story. But was it really a spark plug, or just a curiously shaped mineral formation that happened to resemble one? Later, more detailed analysis suggested the internal structure didn't perfectly match a known champion plug, which added another layer of confusion. Without the original geode to study, the truth stays out of reach. So the Coso artifact stands not as proof of ancient spark plugs, but as a cautionary tale. It reminds you that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. A single strange object, divorced from its context, is often a mystery that can never be fully solved. It muddies the waters, makes it harder to focus on the genuinely unexplainable finds that have better documentation. The pursuit of out-of-place artifacts isn't just about collecting oddities. It's a discipline that requires the patience of an archaeologist, the skepticism of a scientist, and a willingness to sometimes say this one, as fascinating as it seems, might just be a rusty old car part. In June of 1936, a couple was walking near London, Texas, along a creek bed. They saw a piece of rock with wood sticking out of it. They took it home and cracked the rock open. Inside was a hammer, an iron hammerhead with a wooden handle sealed inside solid stone. The location mattered. The rock came from a formation dated to the Cretaceous period. That's over 100 million years old, the last of the dinosaurs. So the implication was a human-made tool from a time before humans should have existed. It was presented as the ultimate out-of-place artifact, a hammer from the age of giants. The hammer itself is unusual. The iron head shows no rust. Analysis showed an unusual iron alloy with only trace carbon and a high chlorine content. The wooden handle was partially petrified, turned to stone. On the surface, it all pointed to immense age, but geology tells a different story. Experts pointed to a common process. The hammer wasn't found in 100-million-year-old bedrock. It was found inside a concretion. A concretion is a hard mass that forms when mineral cement binds sediment together around a nucleus. That nucleus can be a fossil, a shell, or a lost hammer. These can form relatively quickly, especially in mineral-rich water. Over decades, a tool dropped in a creek can become the heart of a stony lump. It looks to an untrained eye like ancient rock. The hammerhead's composition also points to a recent origin. The iron alloy is consistent with 19th-century American smithing. The lack of rust is likely due to the low carbon content and the unique chemical environment inside the concretion. The petrified wood handle isn't proof of millions of years either. Petrification can occur under the right conditions in a much shorter time frame. So the London hammer is about context and process. An extraordinary claim demands more than a strange-looking object. It requires impeccable geological context. Was the concretion found in a dated Cretaceous layer, or just loose in a creek that cuts through those layers? In this case, the hammer was removed by amateurs. Its exact original placement was lost. That breaks the chain of evidence. This artifact doesn't prove ancient humans. It proves how easily we can be deceived by appearances. Nature creates convincing illusions. A fast-forming limestone shell can make a century-old tool look impossibly ancient. The real mystery isn't the hammer's age. It's the human desire to see a world-shaking discovery in an ordinary, lost object. It reminds you to look not just at the artifact, but at the story of the stone that holds it. The line between a lost tool and a profound insight is just perspective. You can look at the hammer in stone, or you can look at the sands of Egypt. There's an object there that asks a quieter question. In a tomb at Saqqara, resting for over 2,000 years, was a small wooden carving. At first glance, it's a bird, a simple model of a falcon, but you look closer. Its wings are smooth and straight, its body is streamlined, and its tail isn't horizontal like a bird's tail for steering, it's vertical, a vertical stabilizer. This is the Saqqara bird, dated to about 200 years before the Common Era. It was catalogued as a toy or a ceremonial object. For decades, that was that. Then, much later, someone with a background in aerodynamics held it, and they saw not just a bird but a design, the proportions of the wings to the body. The specific angle of the wings which provides lift, that vertical tail which provides stability in flight, it prevents a glider from spinning out of control. When researchers tested replicas in wind tunnels, the Saqqara bird showed remarkable gliding capabilities. With a small addition, like the horizontal stabilizer it lacks, some tests suggest it could have flown quite well. So what was it? The possibilities are all intriguing but grounded. It could have been a very advanced toy, a child's glider crafted by an artisan who understood, through trial and error, what shapes caught the wind best. It might have been a ceremonial throw stick used in rituals, its form evolving for a graceful, sweeping arc through the air, or, most speculatively, it could have been a scale model. A concept piece for something larger, a craftsman's experiment, observing how birds soar and trying to capture that principle in wood. The key point is this. The Saqqara bird does not imply powered flight in ancient Egypt. There are no engines, no blueprints for aircraft. What it suggests is something equally profound. Empirical observation and proto-engineering, a culture watching the natural world intensely, not just for art or religion, but for function. They saw the hawk riding the thermal currents and wondered how that worked. Then they tried to replicate the principle, not the creature. They abstracted the idea of flight from the bird itself. That leap from observation to application is the very foundation of aerodynamics. This artifact challenges a subtle timeline, the timeline of human thought. It places a form of practical aerodynamic inquiry centuries earlier than we might assume. It reminds us that the science of flight didn't begin with Leonardo da Vinci's sketches or the Wright brothers' bicycle shop. It began much earlier, in scattered moments of curiosity. A craftsman in Saqqara carving a piece of sycamore wood might have been holding one of those moments in his hands. The Saqqara bird isn't an anomaly of technology. It's a testament to a universal human trait, looking up at the sky and wondering how to join it. That need to look up and chart a course, it has a twin. A more physical one, the need to draw the world, to put your place on parchment. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral, a cartographer named Piri Reis, he did that. He made a world map. He used over 20 source charts. Some of them, he said, went back to the time of Alexander the Great. The thing he made, the Piri Reis Map, it's stunning. It shows the Atlantic coast of South America, the bulge of West Africa, islands in the Atlantic, all with a precision that's remarkable for that time. But then there's the lower left section. That's where the deepest controversy is. Down there, below the Atlantic, there's a landmass. Its coastline is drawn with care. Bays, inlets, what look like river estuaries. To a lot of people, that landmass looks like something. It looks like the northern coastline of Antarctica. Specifically, Queen Maud Land. And the problem with that, according to the conventional history, is huge. Antarctica wasn't officially sighted until 1820. And its coastline has been under ice, a mile-thick sheet of ice, for at least 6,000 years. So the question is, how could a mapmaker in the 1500s draw a continent nobody knew was there? And show its coastline as it would look without all that ice? The implication is seismic. If that is Antarctica, then the source maps Piri Reis used, they came from a time before the ice. A time when ancient sailors, maybe a civilization we've lost, had the skill to map a continent free of ice. Their charts would have been copied, handed down. Fragments of a forgotten global geography, surviving just long enough to get into Rice's compilation and then vanishing again. Skeptics, though, they see it differently. They point out the map isn't a satellite photo. It has known errors. It has speculative landmasses, which was common for maps back then. That southern land could be a composite. A cartographer's best guess. It might be a distorted, extended version of the southern coast of South America, a place Europeans in 1513 still didn't understand well. Or it could be the legendary Great Southern Continent, Terra Australis, a theoretical land cartographers had been drawing for centuries to balance the northern continents. In that view, the detailed coastline isn't a survey. It's an artistic flourish, filling empty space with geographic possibility, so the debate comes down to intent. Was Piri Reis recording known geography, or was he part of a tradition of speculative map-making? The map itself has clues. In his notes, Reis says he used a source map drawn by Christopher Columbus. He mentions the maps of the western parts drawn by Kulunbu, that's the Turkish name for Columbus. That ties his work directly to the latest European discoveries, even if they were incomplete. He also writes about using Arab maps of India and China, and about 20 charts and mappamundi, some from ancient times. He was a synthesizer. He wasn't an explorer. He was piecing together a jigsaw puzzle where many pieces were missing, or damaged, or based on rumor, so that landmass could be a misinterpretation. A fragment from an older map showing an unknown coast, which Reis included without realizing it was a whole continent, separated by a vast, uncharted ocean. Maybe it was a misplaced rendering of a real coastline from somewhere else, copied wrong over generations. The resemblance to Antarctica, then, could just be a coincidence. A compelling alignment of shapes. The Piri Reis map doesn't give easy answers. It's a palimpsest of human knowledge, layers of accurate observation, ancient legend, and educated guesswork, all on one sheet of gazelle skin. It challenges the timeline of geographical discovery, and it challenges how we think knowledge is preserved and corrupted over time. It whispers of a world more connected in antiquity than we might believe, where maps could be both precise records and vessels of myth. Whether that southern land is Antarctica or not, the map stands as a haunting monument to the gaps in our history. It's a reminder. Every confident line drawn on a map is also a story, and some of those stories are about worlds we've utterly forgotten. The line between forgotten geography and pure myth is delicate. Some stories cross it. They don't just talk about advanced knowledge, they talk about contact with something not from this world. That brings us to the Dropa Stones. One of the most persistent stories and one of the most controversial. The account says in 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pute was exploring caves. This was in the remote Bayan Ha Mountains. In one cave, his team found something. They found rows of graves. The skeletons inside were described as unusually small. Delicate, more intriguing were the stone discs, hundreds of them nearby. Each disc was about a foot across, with a hole in the center. They looked like ancient records or stone gears. Their surface had a fine groove, a spiral from the center out to the rim. The story goes that under a microscope, this groove wasn't just decoration. It was a continuous line of tiny, unknown hieroglyphic characters. The narrative deepens. The discs were allegedly analyzed, dated to around 12,000 years old. And the writing, once they deciphered it, told a story, an incredible story. It was said to be the chronicle of a people called the Dropa. Their spacecraft had crashed in those mountains long ago. They were stranded, couldn't repair their ship. They took shelter in the caves. The local tribespeople were fearful at first. Then came conflict. The writing on the stones was their plea. A record of their plight, their peaceful intentions. It's a compelling narrative, a science fiction story wrapped in archaeology. It touches on isolation, misunderstanding, the desire to find our place in a cosmos that might be populated. The tale spread in the 1960s and 70s through popular books and magazines. It captured a world newly fascinated by extraterrestrial life, by ancient astronauts. Mainstream archaeology has a different view. They dismiss the entire account. No credible journal ever published Kai Pute's findings. No museum holds these discs. The original discoverer has never been conclusively identified. The few photographs are grainy. They show plain stone discs. They could be millstones or ceremonial by discs, which are common in ancient China. The story itself is full of inconsistencies. The details change with each retelling. Most scholars believe it's a complete fabrication, a modern myth born from sensationalist storytelling, from misinterpreted local folklore about small-statured peoples. Maybe from a genuine but ordinary archaeological find that got reimagined. This is where the Dropa Stones become instructive beyond the question of truth. They show a dynamic in the search for mysteries, the human desire for a certain kind of answer, for proof of ancient, otherworldly contact. That desire can short-circuit the slower process. The less glamorous work of rigorous methodology. When the desire for a spectacular narrative is strong enough, it can weave disconnected threads, a cave. Some old stones, local legends, it weaves them into a tapestry that feels like a movie plot, not like history. The tale endures not because of evidence. The evidence is virtually non-existent. It endures because of its appeal. It offers a simple, dramatic explanation for human origins, for ancient wonders. It bypasses the complex, gradual, entirely human story that archaeology usually reveals. It transforms a potentially mundane discovery into a cosmic secret. And in doing that, it highlights something else, the real wonder, which is the patient, careful work of understanding our actual past with all its incremental achievements and its quiet mysteries. So the legacy of the Dropa Stones isn't a box of ancient star maps. It's a cautionary note, a reminder to temper our awe with analysis, and to recognize that sometimes the most extraordinary thing about the past is our capacity to tell stories about it. There's a real mystery, a book. It's kept in a vault at Yale, about 240 pages on vellum. They carbon-dated it to the early 15th century, and it's covered in handwriting. An elegant script, but it's a script no one knows, a language no one can identify. That's the Voynich Manuscript. For over a century, every attempt to read it has failed. The writing is just the start. The pages have these paintings, vibrant and strange. There's a section on plants, dozens of them, but they don't match any known herbal. Leaves with impossible spirals, roots that look like anatomy, flowers from a dream. Another section has astrological diagrams, tubes and pipes connecting spheres. In a configuration that doesn't fit any known medieval cosmology. Then the most puzzling pages. They seem biological or about baths, dozens of small nude figures, drawn schematically, bathing in or connected by a network of vessels and pools. It's surreal, a visual language as cryptic as the written one. So who made it? The vellum and ink are from the period. The artistry is skilled. This wasn't a casual project. It was costly, time-consuming. The common theory is it's a treatise on natural philosophy or herbal medicine. Maybe it was encoded to protect valuable knowledge, a trade secret in a cipher, so a guild's recipes wouldn't be stolen. Another idea is it's a constructed language, an attempt to create a perfect philosophical tongue to describe the natural world, or it could be a hoax. A Renaissance forger making a curiosity for a wealthy patron fascinated by the occult. But if it's a hoax, it's a work of staggering dedication, pointless dedication. The text has statistical properties of a real language. It isn't random gibberish, and this is where it becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a confrontation. A challenge to modern arrogance. We've broken ancient codes, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Linear B. We have cryptographers, we have supercomputers, yet this book, from a time we thought we understood, just sits there. Silently, it mocks the tools. World War II codebreakers, the ones who cracked Enigma, took up the Voynich after the war as a personal challenge. They failed. Modern linguistic algorithms have been applied. Artificial intelligence. They detect patterns, but the meaning stays locked. The Voynich Manuscript is a hole in history. Proof the past isn't a transparent record. It's a fragmented story, and sometimes the most important page is in a language we'll never learn. It's the ultimate puzzle because it withholds its own question. We don't even know what it's asking. Is it a medical text, a cosmological treatise, a religious vision, a lost culture's view of the universe? Without the key, it's all of those things. And none of them. It's a mirror. We look at its strange plants and bathing figures, and we see our own desperate desire for meaning. We project our theories onto its blankness. In its beautiful, frustrating silence, it teaches a humbling lesson. Some doors in the past may stay forever closed, and the greatest mystery is sometimes just the fact of being forgotten. A book no one can read is a mystery of the mind, but a drawing so vast you can only see it from the sky, that's a mystery of the earth. In the high desert of southern Peru, the Nazca Plains have that kind of mystery. Across nearly 200 square miles, there are lines, and not just lines, there are shapes. A hummingbird with its wings out, a spider perfectly proportioned, a monkey with a spiraling tail, a whale in the desert. These are the Nazca Lines. They're geoglyphs etched by removing the dark reddish-brown pebbles on the surface to show the lighter soil underneath. They're colossal. Some of the figures are over 600 feet across. The straight lines run for miles, cutting the landscape with geometric precision. And they're ancient, made by the Nazca culture between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after. The immediate fact about them is perspective. You can't see them from the ground. If you're walking there, you just see shallow grooves, paths of cleared gravel. The full form, the design, it only becomes clear from a significant height. And that fact has fueled endless speculation. Why would people make art they could never see? The most popular modern idea is, of course, extraterrestrial. That the lines were landing strips or markers for ancient aircraft. It's a dramatic idea, and it comes from that single feature, the scale. Mainstream archaeology has a different picture, a more human one. The Nazca people did have a vantage point. The surrounding foothills give you a natural overlook. From there, groups could have directed the work below. The creation didn't need advanced technology. It needed immense communal effort and sophisticated low-tech methods. With simple tools, wooden stakes, ropes, a deep understanding of geometry, they could plot these designs over vast distances. It was an act of collective faith, of social organization, a project that may have bound the community together for generations. So what was the purpose, if not for visitors from the stars? The leading theories are rooted in the Nazca world. Water, or the lack of it, was the central fact of life in that desert. Many of the lines lead to sources of water. The animal figures, the hummingbird, the spider, the monkey, these are creatures linked to water, to fertility, to rain in Andean cosmology. Scholars think the lines were ritual pathways. Walking these lines, following the shape of a sacred animal, that was likely a form of prayer, a communal ceremony to call on the deities who controlled the rains, the underground water. They were an interface between the human and the divine, drawn right on the skin of the earth. Other theories point to an astronomical function. Some lines align with the solstice sun or important stars. They could mark a celestial calendar for agriculture, for ceremonies. That's not separate from the ritual idea. Astronomy and religion were intertwined. The Nazca Lines challenge our historical timelines in a subtle way. They're not an out-of-place artifact of technology. They're an out-of-place artifact of scale and intention. They make us reconsider what so-called primitive societies could do. This wasn't a culture that left behind towering pyramids of stone. Their monument was the earth itself, transformed into a sacred canvas. The precision for such large-scale earthworks points to a highly developed cultural knowledge, a mastery of mathematics, of astronomy, of social coordination that we're only starting to fully appreciate. It stands as a testament to a different kind of advanced thinking, not metallurgy or mechanics, but a deep, symbolic relationship with the landscape. The real mystery isn't how they were seen, it's what they were meant to be. They were likely never meant for a single viewer's eye. They were for the eyes of the gods above and for the feet of the community below, walking in faith across the body of their world. In that, they are perhaps the largest prayer ever written and the most enduring. The Nazca Lines were made as an act of faith, but there's another set of stones in Peru. They tell a different story. In the 1960s, a farmer near Ica started bringing engraved stones to shops, thousands of them. They were captivating. The scenes on them seemed to rewrite history. They showed humans in what looked like ancient clothing, living alongside dinosaurs, not just hunting them, riding them, like domesticated animals. Other stones showed advanced medical knowledge. Figures performing what looked like cesarean sections, heart transplants, brain surgery, all with detailed anatomy. There were maps of lost continents. Astronomers using telescopes. The narrative was explosive, a lost civilization, one that knew paleontology and modern medicine, millions of years out of place. A fantasy-made stone, they became a sensation. Some said it was proof of ancient aliens or a forgotten human epoch, but the story unraveled. The farmer eventually admitted it. In some accounts, he said he and his family carved the stones. They used modern tools. They aged the engravings with shoe polish and livestock waste. Then buried them to be discovered. The motifs were a mix from science fiction, comic books, local folklore, made for a growing tourist market for people who wanted mysterious relics. There was no archaeological context, no documented excavation site, no soil analysis placing them in an ancient layer. They just appeared for sale, and that's where the Ica stones matter. Beyond the images, they're a masterclass in provenance. Provenance is the documented history of an object, its chain of custody from the moment it's found. Who discovered it, where exactly it was unearthed, what layer of earth it came from, who has handled it since. For science to take an artifact seriously, the provenance has to be impeccable. An unbroken, verifiable paper trail. The Ica stones had none of that. No credible archaeological context, impossible to date or authenticate. Their value was purely narrative, feeding a desire for a sensational past. So the stones stand as a warning. In the search for out-of-place artifacts, they show the pressure of commercialization. When there's a market for the mysterious will be produced. They remind us, the most extraordinary claim isn't the image on the stone. It's the story of where it came from. Before we ask what an artifact means, we have to ask how we know it's real. Scrutinizing the source isn't just skepticism. It's the first step, separating history from hoax, evidence from echo. The Ica stones, in their elaborate fiction, teach a sobering truth. The past can't be bought in a souvenir shop. It's earned through patient, unglamorous work, the work of verification. A coin can hold the weight of 1,000 voyages. In 1957, on the coast of Maine, there was a dig at a Native American settlement. The Goddard site. It was a large, seasonal trading village the Penobscot people used for centuries. They were sifting through stone tools, pottery, bone fragments. And they found something small, metallic, a silver coin, worn smooth. They cleaned it, identified it, and that sent a shockwave through the study of early America. It was a Norse penny, minted between 1065 and 1080 CE. That's over 400 years before Columbus. This is the Maine Penny. It's not a complex machine. It's a simple piece of currency, but its location makes it one of the most compelling geographical anomalies ever found in North America, a Viking coin. In a Native American site on the northeastern coast of the United States, the immediate implication is direct contact. We know the Norse had a settlement at Elance Aux Meadows in Newfoundland around the year 1000. That's verified. The sagas tell of explorers going further south to a place they called Vinland, a land of grapes, milder climates. Could a Norse expedition have sailed down the coast, reached Maine? Could this coin be a lost piece from that journey, traded or dropped during an encounter? It's a narrative that rewrites transatlantic contact, puts Europeans here centuries earlier than the textbooks say. But archaeology demands context, and the context of the Maine Penny is where the mystery deepens. The coin wasn't found alone in a Viking longhouse. It was one artifact among nearly 30,000 at the Goddard site. All the other objects were definitively indigenous. The coin was an outlier, a solitary piece of a different world that leads to the other explanation. Trade networks. The indigenous peoples of the Northeast had vast trade routes, stretching thousands of miles. Copper from Lake Superior moved along them. Shells from the Gulf of Mexico, obsidian from the far west. It's possible the Norse penny entered this system at its northern point, at Elance Aux Meadows, or through contact in the Canadian Maritimes. From there, a long chain of hand-to-hand trade. Over years, even generations, it traveled south, a curiosity, a piece of shiny foreign metal, valued for its material more than its monetary worth. Eventually, it found its way to Maine, lost or deposited at the Goddard site centuries after it was minted. This theory doesn't diminish the coin's significance. It changes it. Instead of proof of a Viking ship in Penobscot Bay, it becomes evidence of the reach of pre-Columbian Native American economies. It shows how an object from one edge of the known world could travel deep into another. Not by a single explorer, but through the slow, patient web of human connection. So the Maine Penny stands at a crossroads. It's tantalizing but inconclusive. It doesn't scream its story. It whispers two competing ones, one of bold Norse exploration, pushing beyond their settlements, the other of a resilient, interconnected indigenous world. A world that could absorb a fragment of a distant culture and make it part of their own landscape. Either way, this small silver disc challenges a simplistic timeline. It blurs the hard line we draw between the old world and the new. Long before 1492, it's a quiet reminder. History is rarely about isolated events. It's about networks. Of people, of trade, and of objects that carry secrets across time and space. In 1974, construction workers were digging a trench near the Mureș River in Romania. They were down about 35 feet. They found something, a wedge-shaped object. It was buried in a layer of sand, and it was found next to two large mastodon bones. Those bones were old, Pleistocene era, tens of thousands of years old. The object itself was heavy, metal, covered in a thick layer of aluminum oxide. They cleaned it, they analyzed it. The results were baffling. It was an alloy, 89% aluminum. The rest was copper, zinc, lead, some trace elements. And that's the core of the mystery. Aluminum in this refined, metallic form isn't found in nature. It's locked inside bauxite ore. To get it out requires electrolysis. That's an industrial process. It wasn't invented until the 1820s. It's a hallmark of the modern age. So you have this chunk of refined aluminum alloy. And it's in a layer with mastodon bones. That's a staggering disconnect. It suggests a piece of 20th century industry was lying next to the remains of an Ice Age giant. The Aiud Wedge became a sensation. In alternative history circles, it was proof proof of advanced, forgotten technology, a tool from a prehistoric civilization that mastered metallurgy far beyond what we think. But skeptical analysis offers a different explanation, more grounded. The key is the object's composition and its context. The alloy isn't pure aluminum. It's a specific mix, and that mix is strikingly similar to alloys used in heavy machinery in the mid-20th century, the teeth of excavator buckets. Vehicle treads, parts made for extreme durability. That leads to the most plausible theory. The wedge isn't ancient. It's a fragment of a modern excavator tooth. A piece that broke off during earlier work in the area. Through natural processes, it could have sunk down through the loose, sandy soil over decades. Eventually, it settled near the much older mastodon bones. This is a known phenomenon. Stratigraphic disturbance. Materials from different time periods get mixed in the same layer. It creates a false association. A backhoe digging in the 1950s could have churned the earth, letting a metal fragment descend, letting it come to rest alongside relics from a different age. So the Aiud Wedge is a masterclass in a different kind of challenge, not necessarily a challenge to timelines, a challenge to interpretation. It underscores two critical things. First, rigorous metallurgical analysis. Knowing the exact composition can point directly to an object's true origin. Second, impeccable site documentation. Understanding the precise geological context is everything. A single object can't tell its own story. It needs the story of the earth around it. The ground isn't a static filing cabinet. It's an active, shifting archive. Water flows, roots grow, animals burrow. Human activity rearranges the layers. An artifact's resting place isn't always its original place. The real mystery may not be its existence but its journey, how a piece of 20th century equipment found its way into an ancient stratum. The answer is likely mundane. But the question forces a discipline. It teaches a cautious humility. Before we leap to rewrite history with a single strange object, we must first rule out the simpler story. The one written in the dirt itself. The Aiud Wedge is one thing. It's a modern object that got tangled up with the deep past, but then there's a story carved in stone. A story that, if it were true, would put Vikings in the middle of North America, centuries after their known voyages ended. In the fall of 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman was clearing land. He was in Kensington, Minnesota. He was uprooting a poplar tree, and there, wrapped in the tree's roots, he found a slab of stone, a type of sandstone called greywacke. It was roughly rectangular, about 30 inches by 16. It weighed over 200 pounds. The surface was covered in carved characters. They were runes. Oman showed it to people. It was a largely Scandinavian community. The inscription was translated. It told an astonishing tale. It claimed to be a record left by Norse explorers. The text spoke of a party, 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians. They were on a journey from Vinland. They described a tragic event. 10 men were red with blood and dead, it read. The inscription was dated. The year was 1362. This was the Kensington Runestone. The implications were staggering. If it was genuine, it meant Norse explorers had traveled from their settlements on the Atlantic coast, all the way inland to what's now Minnesota. Over 100 years before Columbus, it suggested a continued presence, a deeper penetration into the continent than anyone had proposed. The immediate reaction was a mix, local pride and academic skepticism. For the Scandinavian communities in Minnesota, the stone was a powerful symbol. It connected their new homeland in America directly to their ancestral heritage in Europe. It gave them a tangible link to the land, a narrative of discovery that predated other European claims. The stone became a centerpiece of local identity. Linguists and runologists began to pick it apart. They noted problems. The runic alphabet used was a mix. styles from different periods and places. Some runes were forms that fell out of use centuries before 1362. The language was Old Swedish, but it had grammatical constructions and word choices that seemed oddly modern. It read less like a 14th century document, more like how a 19th century person might imagine one. Perhaps the most telling clue was the date itself. It used a decimal system, writing the year as 1362. Medieval Norse inscriptions didn't typically write dates that way. They used phrases like the year of our Lord. The form on the Kensington stone was a modern convention. The prevailing academic consensus is that the stone is a creation of the late 19th century. A product of its time and place, not necessarily a malicious hoax for profit, but perhaps a folk artifact, born from a blend of nostalgia, immigrant pride, and local legend. A farmer familiar with runes from his homeland might have crafted a story to literally root his people in the new soil. The Kensington Runestone, then, goes beyond the question of authenticity. It becomes a case study in how history is claimed and felt. It embodies the human need for a narrative that affirms identity. When scholarly evidence clashes with cultural belief, the stone reminds us. The past is not just about what happened, it's also about what a community needs to have happened. The stone's real legacy isn't in rewriting the history books. It's in illuminating the relationship between people and the stories they tell about where they come from. It is an artifact of longing, carved not just into rock but into the very idea of belonging. A stone can tell you where someone belonged, but a carving on a temple wall tells you what they believed. There's a relief deep inside the Hathor temple at Dendera in Egypt. And it sparked one of the most persistent modern ideas about ancient technology. The scene has two figures. Each one is holding up a large, elongated object. It's bulb-shaped like a giant pear, and inside this bulb there's a snake. It stretches in a wavy line. Its head is pointing toward a small box, and a kneeling figure is holding that box. To a modern eye, the resemblance is uncanny. It looks exactly like a filament inside a glass light bulb, connected to a power source, so the narrative was born. Could this be evidence of ancient Egyptian electric lighting, a lost system, something that explains how they lit those deep, windowless interiors, their tombs and their temples? The idea is captivating. It offers a neat solution, a technological answer to a practical mystery. How did they see to create those intricate paintings? In pitch-black chambers, the theory suggests they had arc lamps or some form of crude electrical generation using primitive batteries like the Baghdad artifact. And it paints a picture of a civilization far more advanced than our history books say. But Egyptology reads the scene in a completely different language. The language of myth and symbol. Scholars identify the bulb not as a vacuum tube but as a lotus flower. In Egyptian iconography, the lotus is a powerful symbol of creation and rebirth. Emerging from the primordial waters, the snake inside is not a filament. It's a representation of a god, Harsomptus, a form of the child god Horus. The scene depicts a divine birth, a moment of cosmic emergence. The kneeling figure holding the box is not an electrician. He is the god Her, a deity of eternity. Supporting the sacred symbol, the entire tableau is a religious text in stone, describing the moment a god comes into being from the heart of a sacred flower. This is a classic case of pareidolia, that psychological phenomenon where the human mind perceives a familiar pattern, a face in a cloud, a man in the moon. Or in this case, a light bulb in a lotus where none was intended. We are creatures of our time. We look at the past through the lens of our own technology. When we see a shape, something that reminds us of what we use every day, it's a natural leap, almost irresistible, to assume that's what the ancient artist was depicting. The Dendera relief doesn't challenge our historical timelines with forgotten engineering. It challenges our interpretive frameworks. It asks us to set aside our modern assumptions and step into a different worldview, a worldview where creation was not powered by electricity but by divine will, where light was not just a physical phenomenon but a spiritual one. Emanating from the gods themselves, the real lesson is about context. An artifact cannot be understood in isolation. It has to be read within the entire library of its culture. The same temple at Dendera is covered in hundreds of other reliefs. They show gods, rituals, celestial boats, symbolic plants. Not a single other scene shows anything resembling electrical wiring or generators. The so-called light bulb appears only in this specific mythological context. To pull it out of that context, to force it into a modern technological box, is to miss its true meaning entirely. This carving is a reminder. The past did not dream of our future. It had its own dreams, its own symbols, its own profound understanding of the universe. When we look at the Dendera relief, we are not looking at a blueprint for a lamp. We are looking into a sacred story, carved in stone, about the eternal light of creation. And sometimes that is a far more illuminating discovery. A single small object can cast a very long shadow. That's the story of the Wolfsegg Iron, sometimes called the Salzburg Cube. It starts in 1885 in a coal mine in Wolfsegg, Austria. A miner was breaking apart a seam of coal, tertiary-era coal, and he found something hard. Metallic. It was a small cube, nearly perfect, each side about 2 inches. It had a deep groove around its midsection. The surfaces were pitted, worn. And this coal seam was dated to the Tertiary period, millions of years old, so the immediate implication was staggering. A worked metal object from a time when, according to all accepted science, humans did not exist. Humans capable of smelting and casting iron. The discovery ignited debate. Some saw it as proof, a lost industrial civilization, beings from a forgotten epoch. Others thought it was a meteorite, naturally formed into this bizarrely geometric shape. The object was studied, displayed, argued over for decades. It became a cornerstone of alternative history. A physical piece of evidence that seemed to defy the entire timeline of human progress. The truth emerged from careful analysis, repeated scientific analysis. In the 1960s and 70s, researchers tested the cube. They found it was not a meteorite. Meteoritic iron has a distinctive nickel content. This cube's composition was different. It was cast iron, a man-made alloy, and that specific shape, the deep groove, was identified. It matched a common piece of mining equipment from the 19th century. A cast iron counterweight or a fragment of broken machinery from a pump or a winch. The most plausible explanation is an accident of geology and human activity. A piece of mining equipment broke or was discarded in the mine shaft during the 1800s. Over time, through natural processes, flooding, sediment movement, tunnel collapse, this metal fragment became embedded in older coal deposits. So when the miner later broke open that coal seam, he found the cube. Its context was misleading. It wasn't ancient. It was a modern intrusion that had found its way into an ancient layer. The Wolfsegg Iron is a textbook example of a critical principle in archaeology. Context is everything. The initial story was compelling, a cube in million-year-old coal. But that narrative was built on an assumption that the object's location at the moment of discovery was its original, undisturbed resting place. The subsequent analysis revealed the flaw. The ground, especially in an active mine, is not a static archive. It's dynamic. Materials from different eras mix. The cube's journey from a 19th century machine shop to a tertiary coal seam is a story of geological chance, not ancient industry. This artifact's legacy is not a rewritten history. It's a reinforced lesson in humility. It shows how easily a single, poorly documented find can fuel decades of speculation. It underscores the necessity of rigorous methodology, not just analyzing the object, but scrutinizing the story of its discovery, questioning the soil, the layers, the possibility of disturbance. Before we let an artifact challenge our timelines, we must first let science challenge the artifact's story. The Wolfsegg Iron Cube, in the end, is a monument to a different kind of discovery, the discovery of our own capacity for error and the patient work it takes to correct it. That small cube showed how context matters, but then there's the Takaxic Calixtlahuaca Head. It's a different kind of puzzle, because here the context seems solid. It was found in a sealed burial under a pyramid platform in the Toltec ruins of Calixtlahuaca. That was in 1933, and that structure dates to well before any European contact, long before 1519. But the object itself, it doesn't belong. It's a small terracotta sculpture, just a few inches tall, and it looks Roman. The facial features, the hairstyle, the beard. It's carved in a style from the 2nd or 3rd century. You'd expect to find it in the Mediterranean, not in central Mexico, so the implication is dizzying. A Roman artifact in a pre-Columbian tomb. It suggests a possibility. Could a Roman vessel have crossed the Atlantic? Could there have been some contact, however brief, between the classical world and Mesoamerica? It's a story that captures the imagination. A lone Roman trader, a ship blown off course, an object from that encounter, traded, treasured, finally buried with honor. It's a story that would rewrite the map of ancient connections, but archaeology has to weigh that story against the evidence, and the evidence is a single object. The excavation was led by a reputable archaeologist, José Garcia Payon. The stratigraphy seemed undisturbed. It wasn't a surface find, it was embedded. That gives it a credibility other anomalies don't have, but it's still isolated. No other Roman artifacts were found there. No coins, no pottery, no inscriptions. Just this one stylistically alien head. That isolation is the core of the debate. Most archaeologists lean toward two more likely explanations. One is an accidental intrusion. The site was occupied for centuries. A small object could have been dropped later, maybe during the colonial period. Through natural processes burrowing animals, root growth, it might have worked its way down into an older layer. It's rare, but it happens. The soil record isn't always perfect. The other possibility is more direct. A modern plant. Could someone have placed it there intentionally? The excavation was in the 1930s. Interest in pre-Columbian cultures was high, along with wild theories about foreign contact. The motivation could have been mischief, or a misguided attempt to prove a theory. Without a clear chain of custody from the moment it was extracted, that doubt remains. So the head stands as an emblem of a principle. An extraordinary claim requires more than an extraordinary object. It requires a pattern. A single anomaly, no matter how compelling, isn't enough to overturn established history. To prove transoceanic contact, you'd need a constellation of evidence, similar artifacts in multiple, well-documented sites, linguistic traces, biological evidence. A coherent narrative that fits the archaeological record of both cultures. One head does not make a fleet, yet it persists. It sits in a museum, this quiet terracotta face holding its secret. It challenges us not to believe the dramatic story, but to understand the rigorous standards of proof we demand before we rewrite history. The past is full of whispers. The head forces us to ask how we distinguish between the whisper of a genuine mystery and the echo of our own speculation. Its true value may lie in that question, in the careful work required to separate a world-changing fact from a fascinating, solitary enigma. That solitary terracotta face asks us to weigh a single piece of evidence against the entire story. But what if the evidence itself is a world in miniature? A microscopic world trapped inside a rock from beyond our planet. This brings us to a modern controversy. It began with a meteorite that fell in Sri Lanka. And reports came out that this rock, when examined, contained something astonishing: tiny, intricate structures. They looked like fossilized diatoms. These are microscopic aquatic organisms with these beautiful geometric silica shells. The implication was profound. If these fossils were genuine and native to the meteorite, it meant life existed elsewhere. And it suggested a mechanism for how life might have begun on Earth, panspermia, the idea that life's building blocks or even simple life forms could hitch a ride on asteroids and comets. Seeding planets like ours, the claim sent ripples through the scientific community. It touched astrobiology, paleontology, planetary science. It promised to answer one of our oldest questions. Are we alone? The potential evidence was right there, etched in stone from the heavens. Mainstream science responded with intense skepticism. The central challenge was contamination. A meteorite, after it lands, is no longer in a sterile environment. It plunges through our atmosphere. It heats up, fractures, then it sits on the ground. Exposed to rain, soil, wind, all the microorganisms that thrive there, modern diatoms from Earth's ponds and streams, could easily wash into its crevices. Over time, mineral deposits could form around them, making them appear embedded, as if they've been there for eons. Researchers argued the structures found were not compellingly biological. They lacked the specific, complex architecture of known diatoms. They could be mineral formations, tiny crystals that just happened to look organic under a microscope. Pareidolia, that tendency to see familiar shapes, operates at the microscopic level too. The human eye is trained to see patterns, and scientists are not immune. Not immune to seeing a fossil where there is only a curious crystal. This debate is a masterclass in scientific protocol. It highlights the extreme caution needed. The almost paranoid caution when making claims that bridge disciplines. For a finding to be accepted as proof of extraterrestrial life, the chain of evidence must be impeccable. The sample must be collected under sterile conditions, handled in clean rooms, analyzed with controls that rule out every possible source of terrestrial contamination. The burden of proof is astronomically high, and for good reason. You are asking to rewrite our understanding of life itself. The Sri Lanka Meteorite controversy, though focused on a space rock, holds a mirror to the study of all ancient artifacts. The principle is identical. An object's story doesn't begin when we find it. It begins the moment it enters the historical or geological record. Every second it spends exposed to the elements or to human hands is a chance. A chance for its story to be altered, for new chapters to be written over the old ones. A Viking coin can be traded into a new continent. A modern machine part can sink into an ancient layer. And contemporary diatoms can slip into a crack in a meteorite. The real discovery here isn't about life in space. It's about the fragility of evidence. It's a reminder the past is a signal, often very faint, and our world is full of noise. Separating the two requires more than just a powerful microscope. It requires a profound discipline, a willingness to doubt the extraordinary, to chase down the mundane explanation first, and to build a case, not on a single breathtaking anomaly, but on a mountain of corroborating, meticulously verified detail. The search for truth, whether in the soil or in the stars, is a process of protecting a fragile flame. Protecting it from the constant wind of contamination. A microscopic diatom is one kind of authenticity problem, but then you have this stone disc carved with what looks like the secrets of life. That's the genetic disc. They say it was found in Colombia. It's a circle of black stone about as big as a dinner plate. The surface is covered in carvings. And these aren't just patterns. To us now, they look like clear biological diagrams. One part shows a sperm cell fertilizing an egg. Another shows the stages of cell division, the blastula, the morula. There are detailed images of a fetus at different points in development. The accuracy is startling. It looks like an ancient biology textbook cut into stone. The story built around it is powerful. It's presented as a relic from a lost civilization, one that had advanced knowledge of genetics and human reproduction. Knowledge that, by the conventional timeline, we didn't have until the microscope was invented in the 1600s. The disc is said to be thousands of years old. It's held up as proof of forbidden science, or maybe knowledge from otherworldly visitors. It fits perfectly into a certain kind of mystery, but here, the object itself is almost secondary. The real mystery is its origin. Where did it come from? Who found it? When? Under what conditions? The answer to all that is the same. We don't know. There's no verifiable archaeological provenance, no excavation report, no museum number, no soil samples from where it was found. The disc seems to have appeared fully formed, not from the ground, but from the pages of popular books and from TV documentaries. It lives mainly in the world of ancient astronaut theory and alternative history. That makes the genetic disc a different kind of case. It's an example of a modern thing. An artifact manufactured for a narrative, not necessarily a physical forgery, though that's very possible, but an object whose entire story, its discovery, its age, its meaning has been built to support a conclusion that was already waiting. It's presented not for scholarly review, but for belief. For its supporters, the lack of provenance isn't a fatal flaw. It's often framed as part of the mystery itself. Evidence of a conspiracy to hide the truth, that forces a crucial distinction, the difference between an archaeological mystery and a marketed mystery. A genuine out-of-place artifact comes from the dirt with a problematic context. Its story is a conflict between the object and the established record. The genetic disc, though, comes from a desire for a specific kind of past, one filled with advanced lost knowledge. Its story is crafted to fulfill that desire, and it bypasses the messy, restrictive filters of academic verification. So the disc's real lesson isn't about ancient biology. It's about evidence and storytelling. It shows a basic principle. In the search for truth about the past, the story of an object's discovery is just as important as the object itself. Without a clear, documented chain of custody from the earth to the lab, any object can be made to say anything. Its form can be interpreted to fit any theory. Its age can be asserted without proof. Its meaning becomes a blank screen, and we project our own hopes, our fears, our ideologies onto it. The genetic disc, with its elegant, mysterious carvings, ends up asking us to look inward, to examine our own appetite for the spectacular. It challenges us to value the slow, careful work of context over the immediate thrill of a world-shaking claim. The deepest knowledge it offers might not be about cell division, but about a human division, the division between what we wish were true and what the evidence, patiently gathered, actually lets us say. There's this desire for a spectacular past. It can reshape how we see the evidence, take a real ruin, dress it in the costume of modern warfare. At Mohenjo-Daro, the ancient Indus Valley city, there are these puzzling traces. In certain areas, the bricks and clay look fused. They have a glassy, melted appearance. That state is called vitrification. It requires intense, sustained heat. Far beyond an ordinary campfire, for some, that observation ignited a dramatic theory. They looked at that ancient vitrified material and saw a signature they recognized. From the 20th century, the aftermath of a nuclear detonation, the narrative built itself. Could this be evidence of an ancient atomic war, a catastrophic event from a forgotten epoch? Maybe described in myths as the fiery weapons of gods, it's a story that connects our deepest modern fears to the silent stones of antiquity. It suggests a cycle, a warning from a lost world, but archaeology, when it examines the same stones, hears a different story, a quieter one, rooted in the mundane realities of an ancient urban center. The primary explanation from researchers is far less apocalyptic, but no less significant. Mohenjo-Daro was a large, densely packed city. It contained massive granaries, storing the community's vital food supply. These structures would have held enormous quantities of dry grain, straw, wooden supports. If such a storehouse caught fire, the result would be a conflagration of incredible intensity, a concentrated, roaring blaze fueled by so much combustible material could indeed generate temperatures high enough to vitrify the surrounding clay and brick. It would be a localized inferno, a devastating accident, or perhaps the result of conflict, but a fire nonetheless. A similar process is seen at other ancient sites where large-scale burning occurred. This interpretation shifts the focus from a mythical super weapon to a known, tragic aspect of ancient life. Cities built of wood, brick, and thatch were incredibly vulnerable to fire. A single spark could erase generations of work. The vitrified ruins of Mohenjo-Daro likely bear witness to one such terrible, ordinary disaster. The theory of an ancient atomic blast demonstrates a tendency. We interpret the past through the lens of our present. Our greatest technological terror is the nuclear mushroom cloud. So when we see evidence of extreme heat in antiquity, our minds leap to that familiar, horrifying image. It's a form of historical pareidolia, seeing the patterns of our own time in the artifacts of another. In doing that, we risk overlooking the simpler, more human truth. The people of Mohenjo-Daro were not survivors of a science fiction catastrophe. They were a sophisticated society that faced the same elemental dangers as all civilizations. Fire, flood, conflict. Their legacy isn't a warning about atomic power. It's a testament to urban planning, social organization, resilience. The fused bricks are not a mystery of lost technology. They are a scar, a silent record of a city's final burning day. A reminder that history's most profound lessons are often written not in the language of mythic weapons, but in the quiet evidence of human vulnerability. The fragile nature of everything we build. The stones at Mohenjo-Daro, silent and fused together, they give us one last thing to consider. They tell us that how we see the past is always shaped by the time we're living in. We've gone through 20 of these puzzles now, from small coins to huge shapes in the desert. Each one was a kind of riddle, a piece of evidence that didn't quite match the story of history we've put together. Some of them we've found answers for, others they stay mysterious, but if you look past the individual objects, you start to see a bigger picture. These mysteries, taken all together, they show us something deep. Not just about history, but about us and about how we try to understand it. First, they show how fragile knowledge is over thousands of years. The Antikythera Mechanism is the perfect example. A device so advanced it changed what we thought was possible back then, and then the knowledge to make it just disappeared. It wasn't handed down, it wasn't built upon. It was a flash of brilliance, and then it was gone. Whole libraries have burned, languages have gone quiet, civilizations have risen, made incredible things, and faded away, leaving behind pieces we try to put back together. These out-of-place artifacts, they're often just those pieces, the ones that survived. They're hints of entire worlds of understanding that we've lost. They remind us sharply that our own civilization, with all its data and connections, isn't safe from that same fragility. What we think we know for sure is built on a foundation that's actually very thin. Second, they show two sides of human nature: our ability for brilliant, intuitive creation, and our strong tendency to get things wrong in creative ways. The Saqqara Bird shows the first, a mind watching a bird and carving the idea of flight into wood. The Baghdad Battery, whatever it really was, shows an ingenious use of simple materials. That's human genius solving problems with what's at hand. But then there's the other side, the Ica Stones, the Dropa story, the so-called light bulb in Egypt. These show how we see what we want to see, how we take separate threads and weave them into a story that fits what we already believe or hope or fear. We look at a lotus flower and see a light bulb. We find a carved stone and imagine an ancient astronaut. That's not really a flaw. It's just how our brains work, looking for patterns. So chasing these artifacts becomes a constant effort to tell the difference between a real discovery and the noise of our own ideas. That leads straight to the third thing, the constant tension between official academia and alternative history. Mainstream archaeology, with its strict methods and demand for proof, it acts as a necessary filter. It protects against hoaxes and mistakes. It insists on evidence that can be checked. That's not being closed off. It's the discipline needed to build a reliable past. But the alternative researchers, the independent people, they have a vital role too. They're usually the ones who spot the oddity first. They ask the hard questions that challenge the accepted story. They keep things moving. The friction between these two worlds isn't a problem. It's necessary. It makes experts look again at their old assumptions. It makes everyone stay humble, because the past is so vast it can always surprise you. So what's the point of these 20 mysteries and others like them? Whether they get explained by science or trade or a simple mistake, or whether they stay unexplained, they do something important. They keep history alive. They stop it from being just a list of dates in a book. They turn it into a living conversation, a dialogue between us now and the quiet, cryptic traces left by people who came before. Every time we look at the Voynich Manuscript and wonder, every time we argue about the Maine Penny, we're part of that dialogue. We're admitting the story isn't over. The book isn't closed. There are still pages missing, chapters we haven't found, maybe whole books written in languages we don't even know. These artifacts are the question marks in the margins of that book. And as long as we keep looking at them, keep questioning, keep searching with minds that are both open and careful, then the story of humanity stays the greatest mystery there is. Looking at these 20 objects, you start to see a pattern. It's like a landscape. There's solid ground, what we know, and then there are these shifting mists, what we don't. With every artifact, there was this push and pull, a mystery that grabs you, and then the search for a more grounded answer. The Baghdad Battery. It could be an ancient electrical cell. Or it could just be a storage jar, the Maine Penny. Maybe it's proof Vikings reached New England. Or maybe it's evidence of a huge indigenous trade network. That back and forth, it isn't a failure. It's how discovery works. These objects, even the ones we eventually explain, they serve a purpose. Their first appearance, that initial shock, it makes us stop. It makes us question the textbook story we've all accepted. That moment of doubt, that "how is this even possible" feeling, that's what drives research forward. It turns historians and archaeologists into better detectives. They have to go back to the site, re-examine the soil, run new tests, look for connections everyone else missed. The mystery, by demanding an explanation, actually refines the method. It improves the tools we use to find the truth. So what do you take from all this? You learn a kind of balance. On one side, you have to demand strong evidence. You have to be skeptical of stories that seem too perfect, of objects that just appear out of nowhere. Provenance, context, peer review, these aren't just dry academic rules. They're the tools that keep us from seeing mirages. They make sure that when we do rewrite history, we're doing it with facts. Not with fantasies, but on the other side, you have to keep your mind open to the vast, unknown potential of human history. You have to accept that knowledge can be lost. That brilliant cultures can rise and fade away, and all they leave behind is a cryptic gear or a strange coin. The Antikythera Mechanism is the proof of that. It's a physical reminder. Our ancestors were capable of feats we never wrote down. There could be other flashes in the dark, other branches of technology or understanding that just didn't survive long enough to be built upon. That means the human story isn't a simple, straight line from primitive to advanced. It's something more beautiful than that, more complex. It's a great branching tree. Some branches grow long and strong. They lead right to our present. Others are shorter, brilliant but doomed. They end in a shipwreck or a library fire. And some roots are so deep and hidden, we're only just starting to sense they're there. These out-of-place artifacts, they're like clues left on that tree. They point to those lost branches, to those hidden roots. They remind us that our history is richer than any single story, stranger and more interconnected.